The eyes of the world have been on Taiwan's elections, and even more than the results, people are interested in China's reaction. Hello and welcome, I'm Louise Watt, and this is Correspondents, where we talk about the news and what's going on behind the news with journalists from around the region. Today I'm joined by a Taipei-based reporter. Yian Lee is reporter for the largest non-profit news organization in Taiwan. It's called The Reporter. His investigative work dives into geopolitics and trade, and he's also written a book on the islands caught between China and Taiwan called Waters Divided. Yian, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
So the elections have finished. Lai Ching-te is president-elect, and he's the man that Beijing did not want to see win the presidency. But perhaps there's a bit of good news on the horizon for Beijing in the form of the speaker, Han Kuo-yu, who's from the Kuomintang, and that's been the main opposition party for the past 8 years. Is Han being elected speaker good news for Beijing?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, but I think it's still too early to have a clear answer on that. But I do think there are some implications with Han Kuo-yu being elected as the legislative speakers, especially considering Taiwan's special status in international stage, where it's very difficult for Taiwan to have normal official diplomacy with most of the major countries in the world. So Taiwan has been, leveraging the parliamentary diplomacy especially for the past 3-4 years, as we have seen, the parliament speaker from Czech Republic, as well as Nancy Pelosi and many other, House representatives from the United States coming to Taiwan. And that is a very important facet and very important tool for Taiwan to facilitate the diplomacy. So now with Han Kuo-yu being elected as the legislative speaker, we are not very sure if this is going to happen, in the coming years. But that's something, as I said, is something remains to be seen. But if the parliamentary diplomacy is going to be difficult to continue, I think that's probably good news for Beijing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so Han Kuo-yu might be good news for Beijing, Lai Ching-te isn't. 2 days after the election, China lured away one of Taiwan's few remaining diplomatic allies, Nauru.
Yeah.
Now, Taiwan is now left with 12, and there's some talk that could soon go down to 11 because Tuvalu, Nauru's neighbor, has recently held an election. We're still waiting to see what comes out of that. But Taiwan's allies, they're mostly small nations in the Pacific, the Caribbean, South America.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest population-wise is Guatemala.
Yeah.
So how useful are these diplomatic allies to Taipei?
I don't want to say this, but they are not really that useful, except for being able to speak for Taiwan during the United Nations General Assembly. But especially for the cases of Pacific Island nations, I think they are still very important in the sense that they are located in one of the most strategically important waters in the world, especially facing the growing threats from China. And also the Pacific Island nations are also very important in the sense that they are a very good indicator to measure the growing influence from China, especially in this region.
Yian, you actually went to the Solomon Islands in 2019, and that was just after the Solomon Islands ditched Taipei in favor of Beijing. So what did you hear on the ground there? What were people saying about Taiwan?
Yeah, when I was in Solomon Islands back in 2019, when I told people that I'm from Taiwan, people literally cried in front of me and kept saying sorry to me. Yeah, because they, most of the people didn't really want the government to, switch the ties from Taipei to Beijing. Yeah.
And why was that?
Some people tell you that, well, we are also a democratic country. So, based on the democratic values, we shouldn't betray Taiwan. But I think one of the most important reasons was actually more about economic, because we're, like maybe 80 or 90% of the retail business are now dominated by, the small business and some businessmen coming from China. And Solomon Islands' most important export timber, and most of them goes to China. Yeah, so I think it's pretty much like an everyday life for the Solomon Islanders to witness how China is infiltrating and also expanding their influence into their country. Like, from they witness that from their everyday life. Taiwan is actually doing a lot of things in Solomon Islands as well, because we have some except for financial aids, we also have technicians and doctors stationing on the island. So, and these people have like everyday contacts with local people there. So they do bring some of the benefits to the islands as well. So yeah.
And they're technicians doing projects, I assume, like agricultural projects. So helping improve people's diets there, and educational medical clinics. And since then, since Solomon Islands ditched Taipei, now 4 years later, we can probably say Solomon Islands has the closest relationship with Beijing of all the Pacific Island nations. We've seen them build lots of big infrastructure, like what China often does in these small nations, and they've built a big stadium that hosted the Pacific Games towards the end of last year, where thousands of athletes competed. So do you think this is a successful strategy for Beijing to pick off Taiwan's allies one by one?
I think so far it's been pretty successful if you look from their perspective. Yeah, but I think it's very interesting to note that people in Taiwan don't really seem to, care about that much nowadays. Because, as you said, these are mostly like small countries. And I think the DPP government has been, very outspoken about, establishing unofficial ties with like-minded countries. It's also very interesting that some of Taiwanese even think it's a good thing for the number of diplomatic allies of ROC to go to zero, because that means the legitimacy of ROC on Taiwan is weakening. And it's not necessarily a bad thing for those people who are pursuing, like de facto Taiwan independence.
So what you're saying, because at the moment Taiwan is the Republic of China. So if the Republic of China, if its formal allies goes down to zero, would that mean the end of the Republic of China, and Taiwan would have to come out as Republic of Taiwan possibly? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what some people in Taiwan are thinking about. Yeah, that's right.
So let's move on to the subject of Ukraine now, because since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, there's been a tremendous amount of sympathy in Taiwan for the plight of Ukrainians. And we've seen lots of donations from ordinary Taiwanese, and the government as well giving lots of direct and indirect humanitarian assistance. But Yian, your reporting has shed light on something else, on a way that Taiwan may actually be assisting Russia in its war in Ukraine. Could you tell us, what have you uncovered?
Yeah, we did an investigation on how some of Taiwanese manufacturers are actually taking advantage of the export control loopholes by shipping some crucial machineries to Russia via Turkey. And it's something very embarrassing for the Taiwanese government, because these machineries are very critical for weapons productions and military industries. And some of the machineries was actually even acquired by nuclear institutes in Russia. So it's something really big and embarrassing for our government. But I think it's very important to note that the Taiwanese government has been reluctant to really respond on this because of the dilemma they're facing. Because the machinery industry in Taiwan has been suffering due to the depreciation of the Japanese yen, which makes Japanese products even more affordable than the Taiwanese. And one of the most important demands for machineries are from car manufacturing industry, which we don't really have in Taiwan. So that's the reason why Taiwan rely on exports even more than other machinery manufacturing countries.
But what kind of reaction has there been among the Taiwanese public to this revelation that Taiwan is aiding Russia's war in Ukraine?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, because I found the Taiwanese readers and audience, they seem to be pretty indifferent to the news, and some people even came to me and tell me that, well, why do we need to follow what the United States told us to do? because we're a small country and we rely very much on the export sectors. And we can't just, we can't just stop the exports of machineries to Turkey just because of, the possibility of those machines being, resold to Russia.
Do you think there would have been a stronger response if it had been found, your investigation, that semiconductors were landing in the hands of
Oh yeah,
Russia?
for sure. And that's something that I'm working on as well. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to that. Final topic, but before we go for today, we spoke at the beginning about Taiwan's elections, and that's kicking off a year that is being deemed a crucial year for democracy. There's going to be so many elections around the world. And another key one, November, the US election. Yeah. And that's increasingly looking like it might be a rematch between Biden and Trump. And the last time Trump was in power, he was actually very popular in Taiwan. What do you think the prospects are for him being popular a second time here?
Honestly, I'm not really sure about the answer to this question, but I do think that some people in Taiwan that were previously supporting Trump might know that it's probably not a good news for Trump to be reelected as the US president from Taiwan's perspective. Yeah.
Well, because last time he gave a lot of support to Taiwan, it was very much seen that his administration was supporting Taiwan, was selling more weapons than before.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I would say Trump had those policies not necessarily, for the Taiwanese people. He probably didn't have Taiwan in mind when he, was making the decision. Yeah. So, yeah, but according to what he said recently, I think some people in Taiwan have noticed that, well, probably Trump is not a good thing for Taiwanese people to see another Trump being elected for another term. Yeah, I'm not sure about this, but I think this is a very interesting question that remains to be answered. Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll be following this, of course, over the coming months, and also your reporting on semiconductors and everything else. Yian, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for joining us. I'm Louise Watt, and this has been Correspondents. Stay with us on TaiwanPlus.